turned a bit of a corner now, thankfully. Well, it's another milestone moment.
This is a racking system that we've got to put all that stuff in the shed. We've got locker doors here, locker doors, locker doors, locker doors, shelving, port light trims, more port light trims, shelving. Oh no!
Oh, babe.
Something just fell over.
What fell over?
Totem pole.
This is Brilliant 2, a Kelly Peterson 44 built in 1978. This is us, the Smallwoods. Julian and I have owned Brilliant 2 since 2005. We bought her in Thailand and sailed her back to Australia. They say all boats leak, and Brilliant 2 was a good example of what can happen when water comes into a boat over many, many years. Although structurally sound, there was a lot of damaged timber and delaminating veneer. It was time to give our beloved boat an internal refit. The first stage of this work involved demolition, removing damaged veneers, a lot of sanding, replacing veneers, and more sanding. Next was a varnishing mission and the start of the rebuild.
Well, we've turned a bit of a corner now, thankfully. A moment we thought would never come. So we've actually got the first coat of varnish on the floor. We went to Bunnings. We are some of their best customers now. And the nice man there recommended, well, initially he recommended a water-based product, but we decided to go with an oil-based product because it's a little bit, we thought it was a little bit harder wearing. So we've gone with this Cabot's CFP floor, satin finish, as you can see.
It's polyurethane.
It's a clear flooring polyurethane for all timber, parquetry and cork flooring. It's recommended that we use these lamb's wool applicators. So they look like this and they go onto a broom handle. Disaster. Basically, the bit of the lamb's wool came off. Just wasn't the right tool for this type of space. It might work on great big open decks of flooring, but for here where it's goes in and out, you've really got to keep to the direction of the grain. A brush was much more useful. It's one of these because it's got the sort of cutting in edge, and that was really useful. I could do comfortably two planks at a time. You want to try and keep a wet edge, which is another reason why there's issues with that lamb's wool up there, because it just, yeah, as it came to where the brush had been, it just didn't quite work. So anyway, we've got the method of application all down now. What has to happen now is second coat. So it's been 24 hours since we were down here. And I've just got to go sand those bits. They give it a very light sand. Just make sure the adhesion of the next coat is really good. That's where we're at.
Alright, so what we found in here was there's actually a section of flooring goes in there, and we found it all saturated with diesel. Same as this bulkhead here. The diesel stain, I've actually put a line there to make sure it's not extending any further, but this is all stained and soaked with diesel as well. And we're never going to get that out, so we're going to seal it with Everdur. We're going to wipe it down with some acetone as best we can. Then we're going to seal this whole floor and up to here with Everdur, hopefully get rid of the smell anyway. And the evidence of that, I found that coming up under the floor here. It was a diesel return hose from the engine, from the main engine, and it had been cut off in here, and a new return hose now goes through up here instead, and that was obviously the culprit. That had split and spewed diesel years ago. I don't know if this section filled up with diesel or not, but we've got rid of that, and but we can't get rid of the diesel, so we're just going to have to seal it in there and get rid of the smell the best we can and just live with it. Now what we're going to do in here, because this flooring has been soaked with diesel and is quite badly damaged, it's outside the engine room, people dropping tools and stuff like that over the decades. So we're actually going to find a flooring to lay over here. It's probably just going to be some snap together flooring from Bunnings in appropriate colour, and we won't have to worry about this section ever again.
Well, the floor's now complete. 3 coats of varnish on it, which it's just looking amazing. And apart from the hobbit hole, which we didn't touch because with the proximity to diesel, etc., we think we're going to put some imitation stuff in there. But the rest of it is, look at that. Except for the fact that we've got all these removable sections, I chose to varnish them in situ, and we put packing tape around the edges so that nothing would stick together. But I now want to do those. I want to just give those a coat, and obviously coat the frames. So this is where they come out. So they're going to have 3 coats, the same as everything else. It's just we thought this was the best way of doing it. So yeah, we'll just do a mission on these.
One of the biggest causes of leaks in these Petersons, we discovered, is through the port lights. The reason being is the bronze original port lights that they used. Someone thought it'd be a great idea to have the flange on the inside of the hull, the inside of the coach roof, rather than on the outside, and it just doesn't work. So I've taken them off, taken the port light trims off as a teak trim, and as you can see, there's a myriad of holes. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's about 14 holes around each port light. This is the double one over the galley, and the sealant that we're looking at here, which is like chewing gum in places, is 43 years old, and there's voids from manufacturing, and basically that's where most of the water has been getting in. So what I'll be doing is cleaning all the old sealant off of here, and drilling out these holes, putting a countersink in them, give me something to fill, and I'll be filling with epoxy with R403 filler, fibre filler, filling all the voids, ready for the rebuilt port light trims to go back on, and I won't be using any fasteners. They're just going to be glued on with silicone sealant. So I've been removing the teak port light trims, which are a source of lots of leakage into the hull, because they're screwed on and the old sealant is a bit like chewing gum, and screws leak, everything leaks, so it's all bad. So taking them off, what I'm doing is restoring them back to their original glory. So what we get is the pieces like this. Get rid of all the old sealant, push the screws out, clean up the bits, and join them back together again.
A lot of people just replace these with modern aluminium port lights, don't they?
Which is a much more sensible way to go, but it means that the boat is no longer original, and we're trying to keep the boat original. So we're going to rebuild these. I've put this one together. This is a double port light trim that goes over the, there's 2 port lights in this one, goes over the galley, and I've cleaned these bits up. It's the 2 end pieces, you can see they've all been cleaned up with the belt sander. I haven't cleaned up the tops because I'll do that once it's all glued together. You can't see it on there, but there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, tiny little piece, 12 pieces in this one, and I'm going to glue it back together with Techniglue, and then clean it up. What I've done is pull the port light trims off, clean them up. You saw some video of that earlier, and glued them together, and you can see the glue joints here on the back. What I've done with the screw holes is I've drilled them out to the right size to take these plugs. Buy yourself a plug cutter like that for making teak plugs. Find yourself a scrap piece of teak. Here's one that I've been using for a while. The drill takes out a little core, drill that down in there, and you're left with a little round plug teak. Those teak plugs are glued into all the holes that I've drilled out. Make sure you line up the grain on the plug with the grain in the wood, looks better. And now I'm just about to chop them off. When you glue them in, make sure there's always a nice bead of glue around the top, because the glue does tend to shrink a bit and you can be left with a hollow. So you just chop them off like that. Chopping with the grain always, across the grain. Prepared this with 120, sanding it down to 120. So now I'm just going to take the plugs and the glue, line around the plug down to the same 120 grit. That didn't take long, so I just go over and do those, and then that one is to 120 grit, and then all I've got to do then is my 240, and that's it for that. Because it's external, we just sand it to 240 grit. I'll varnish this 3 coats or 4. And then that will just stick on with sealant.
So it becomes purely cosmetic, doesn't it, as opposed to anything practical anymore?
Well, it was cosmetic before, but it was impractical because it was fixed on with screws. And over time, the screws let moisture in and wasn't practical. Now it is going to be practical and cosmetic.
And hopefully we should see a dramatic reduction in the amount of water going down inside.
Well, we have already, and where we have put these on, the port lights that leaked really badly, well, they don't leak at all now. That whole width there becomes a silicone, I'm using silicone, roofing silicone, and it becomes one big seal over the outside of the port light. So we'll see how it goes.
So today's mission was turning our shed into something that looks like a varnish drying rack. We've got some racking in the shed already, and we just added some timbers to make some extra shelves so we can stack everything. And now I've had to work out a jigsaw puzzle of how it will all stack, and then I'm going to have to work on one shelf at a time, of course moving all these doors and drawers, ladder, etc. before we can pretty much start on anything else. So that's the start of another part of the varnish project.
Well, it's another milestone moment. We've just got the third and final coat of varnish on all this removable timber from the boat. So all our drawers, doors, locker doors, little bits and pieces. The ladder, that's had polyurethane, different type of varnish on it. This has all had the single pack Hempel on it. And we're about to put it all away. Yay!
So today is a big day in that we're putting our first bits of laminate into the boat, and they're two quite big ones. We've got a plywood, which is 3.9mm plywood, and it's had a teak veneer pressed onto it by a company down in Brisbane, by the sheet, and that's what we're going to do these two bulkheads forward here. Because they're big bulkheads, we don't really want to use Laminex imitation teak, because it just won't look right. So we've got our main bulkhead just here, just to cut the sun off there. That's going to be covered, and there's another bulkhead here, forward-looking bulkhead. Here's one. Here's the preliminary cut of this piece, which is going to fit in there with a little bit of coaxing. And on this area here, we've got a teak edging, which we're putting in for various reasons, and that's going to get glued in first. The piece that we can fit in there, a 4 foot wide sheet would actually go in whole. But the trouble with 4 foot wide is that we are limited by the biggest hole in the boat, which is 800 wide across the diagonal here. So this this piece that I've cut here for that forward bulkhead is 800 wide, or 780, and it should just fit through. I made the template here, took it home, cut it at home. So moment of truth is about to show itself. Hopefully I got it right. Otherwise I'll be cutting some more off. So the teak plywood did fit in. I'm just going to offer it up and see how close I am. If you come around here into the galley, into the head on the other side, you can see that the when I put this wet area laminate panel into the head, we had to do the same thing, cut it to 800 wide so it would fit into the boat through the companionway. So that join there, we'll probably find it's in exactly the same spot on the other side of the bulkhead, more or less, and there it is. Here it is up there. So we didn't want to, I cut it short of here because you don't want a sharp, a pointy bit where the join is. So at least we've got a bit of ply before it actually joins this one. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to glue our trim piece in here using epoxy glue, and then when that's set, I'm going to, or as it's gelling anyway, I'll get this ready. When that piece is in, we can make the pattern for this bit, which I couldn't do until this piece of plywood was in. What I've done is I've dry fitted everything, make sure it works, and make sure my clamping arrangement here is all set up to avoid any panics if you haven't got it right and you've got glue going off. So the epoxy glue that I'm using is Techniglue, and it gives you about 15-20 minutes in this sort of temperature. It is midsummer, of course, before it starts going off. So I'm just going to pull this apart now and mix up some glue and stick it on. With this method of doing it, if you've done it right, or if you just got lucky like I probably did, you can just turn these like a latch, and your strip of wood, that one won't, but your strip of wood will just come out. So this is epoxy, structural epoxy adhesive. It's very strong. Use it a lot for timber in all areas of the boat, structural repairs. And this is what I'm using to fix this, fix these plywood bulkheads on. I'm using it because it's actually adding strength to the bulkhead. and it's putting back what I took out. The layers of delaminated plywood that were taken out, we're replacing it with new marine ply that's got the teak veneer on the surface. This is a 2-to-1, 2 parts to 1 part epoxy. I'm going to mix it up and slap it on. I find the best way to get this 2 parts to 1 part mix reasonably accurate, doesn't have to be exact, is just make three piles, 2 piles of the glue and 1 pile of the hardener. So just make sure that your spatula that you're going to stick in there has not got any glue on it, and another little pile, same size, more or less. It's important to get an even layer of glue when you're gluing stuff like this in. You're going to have a load of glue squishing out everywhere where you don't want it if it isn't evenly spread, and it makes it very even when you actually push the part that you're gluing into what you're gluing it on. So, adhesive spreader, notched. I've glued this strip on now with the epoxy, and got these little cleats to hold it on while the glue dries. Cleaned it up with a bit of methylated spirits, and I'll fine tune the other pieces. This is the one on the starboard side. This went in very nicely. Had to do the cutout for the PowerPoint there. That's got a little teak trim goes around it, which will go on after the varnish is done. This is our large piece of teak veneered plywood. Now the next bit to finish this off is section that's going to go in here. This was rotten for years in here. We've repaired that with epoxy and marine plywood, filled that. This whole area is going to get filled with a nice piece of veneer. Easiest way to make a pattern, an exact pattern, so the piece of teak the teak plywood that I cut out for going in here, the easiest way to do that is cut yourself a whole load of 1.5 to 2 inch wide strips of 3mm ply, and you can, by stapling these together, you can make a very effective exact pattern. You trace around that on your plywood that you're going to cut out, and as long as you're accurate with the jigsaw, it should be a very close fit, just requiring minimal sanding to get it to fit.
Ra-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bop.
Ra-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bop.
Re-bop-biddy-bop.
Re-bop-biddy-bop.
Ra-di-ya-di-ya-di-ya-di.